at the end of the day, assuming you still have a good amount of money, if you're found not guilty on these charges, like, yeah, do you just take your money and live abroad and just have a quiet, peaceful life, do what you want to do? Or do you basically kind of like, y'all couldn't get me, I'm back, and like, let's go.
I gotta see that route from Diddy. I don't know.
That route does feel more like who, his personality.
But maybe this experience kind of changes him. And,
but then again, you still have that, like, how is he going to be received?
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard a lot of things that people aren't comfortable with. Will he be kind of like re-embraced by, his social circle of people, or will he kind of be shunned a little bit? Now, there's there's always going to be a little bit of both, but like, what's the tipping point? If he gets off, there's going to be people that'll be happy he got off. Mm-hmm. They tried to jack up my man and they couldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. There's going to be people who go like, yeah, this guy's still a piece of shit based on what I heard, and maybe he got off on a technicality. And so it's going to be very divided.
Let's go to this Diddy thing. So prosecutors have dropped the attempted kidnapping, arson theories, and certain sex trafficking charges against Diddy. The judge is trying to get a decision made by Friday, okay, and by the latest early next week. So they're trying to get this thing over and done with. What does this mean in your estimation that they've dropped those particular charges after all of the witnesses and things of that nature have taken a stand and things like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't be overly optimistic if I'm Diddy about this. And I think that, when you present a case, particularly a RICO case, you need to string together like multiple crimes. And I think they cast a very wide net. And as the evidence evolved, I don't know to what extent they were surprised or they recognized this could go this way. I think the evidence didn't necessarily support some of the charges you've got there. And so when you go to a jury or when you turn a case over to a jury, you want them to have the simplest decision to make. And by streamlining your charges, you give greater focus on the ones that you think you really did a good job of proving. And that's what they're going to focus on. They're going to say, you heard this, you heard this, you heard this. This constitutes the crime of this. And they're going to lock into that jury and give them as simple a thing to decide as possible in their favor. And I think what they're doing is they're taking away some of these things, the kidnapping, the arson, that, again, if the jury goes back in that room, they've got to deliberate and reach a conclusion on those charges. And if the evidence wasn't particularly strong, the testimony wasn't particularly strong, they could spend hours hemming and hawing over whether they could establish arson or not. And meanwhile, they're kind of distracted on all that. And, maybe they don't get around to consider what you feel your strongest charges are. And so I think it's a completely tactical move, but I don't necessarily believe that it's a sign of weakness from the prosecution's case. I think it's really an act of kind of focusing that, okay, this is what you can't deny.
That's a good angle because, what a lot of people believe, and when I first saw that, I totally believed like, oh, this indicates that he's going to get off. When I first read that, up until what you just said, because that totally makes sense. The streamline and make it easier or not easier, but make it less things to worry about.
Even like, I do civil law, and so in some cases, in a civil case, you're like, okay, is person A negligent? Is my client injured? And what, is it a permanent injury? What is the value of that? Now, sometimes if I'm the defense of that, I'll go ahead and admit the negligence. If I rear-ended somebody, if I ran a red light and it's pretty clear, I'm not going to waste any energy arguing about that. I'm going to stand in front of the jury. Hey, I apologize. My client ran through a red light that hit Mr. Smith, and we can't change that. And we're not here today to decide that because we've admitted it. What we're here to do is tell you that we don't agree that Mr. Smith's damages are as bad as they say they are. And here's why. And we go through detailed things that are good for us. Well, he already complained of back pain 2 years earlier and this and that and the other thing. And, that's what you do. And I think what they've done at this stage of it is like, yeah, arson's going to be a reach, kidnapping's going to be a reach, and I don't want the jury to waste any time over that.
Yeah.
And we're going to give you the charges that we feel are absolutely proven. There's, as little controversial testimony. And, bear in mind, Diddy didn't testify. I don't know if they even called any witnesses. I heard they might not call any.
Yeah. They're probably not
and so, they've shown us nothing. They've rebutted nothing. That's their case did nothing. They sat down.
Yeah.
And they can't change that now. And here's what the evidence proved. This charge.
What they did was they rebutted the of course the recants of the other witnesses.
Yeah, you cross-examine the other witnesses, but there's no way that the prosecutors aren't going to argue that, like, when it was their time to speak,
when in the closing arguments or whatever.
When it was their time to speak, did you hear Mr. Combs defend himself? Did you hear anybody speak up on his behalf?
Yeah.
And again, it goes hand in hand. Nobody spoke that. I don't want to waste your time any further, so I'm throwing these charges out, and I just want you to focus on these.
Yeah.
And here's what we heard about these charges.
No, I like that.
And that's how you kind of try to bring the thing home.
No, for sure.
But
okay. So we'll see. I mean, if he does whatever, get off, it's going to be really interesting to see how he integrates back into, like, celebrity or hip hop or whatever.
Yeah.
Because things are so, like, the space is so weird. It'll be so weird if he comes back. And now everything is so different with the podcast space and all of that. I wanted to, like, will one of those guys try to get him on there, Fat Joe and them, or
people will want to hear from him.
You know what I mean? Because we haven't heard anything from him.
Yeah, but if you're him and you get off, like, you've got to be very particular about who you're going to speak to.
Do you kind of want to disappear, or do you kind of want to get back in?
That's a tough decision. And it could go either way. I was going to say, like, at the end of the day, assuming you still have a good amount of money, if you're found not guilty on these charges, like, do you just take your money and live abroad and just have a quiet, peaceful life, do what you want to do? Or do you basically kind of, like, y'all couldn't get me, I'm back, and, like, let's go.
I gotta see that route from Diddy. I don't know.
That route does feel more like his personality.
But maybe this experience kind of changes him. And,
but then again, you still have that, like, how is he going to be received?
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard a lot of things that people aren't comfortable with. Will he be kind of, like, re-embraced by, his social circle of people, or will he kind of be shunned a little bit? Now, there's always going to be a little bit of both, but, like, what's the tipping point? If he gets off, there's going to be people that'll be happy he got off. Mm-hmm. They tried to jack up my man and they couldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. There's going to be people who go, like, yeah, this guy's still a piece of shit based on what I heard, and maybe he got off on a technicality. And so it's going to be very divided. But it's like that weird tipping point, almost like the idiot at the White House, where it's just like, if a certain level of momentum goes and just people don't care. Like, they feel happy he's exonerated, and they don't give a shit, and they wipe away everything else.
I think the don't care thing is what will end up as a society on Diddy. Like the R. Kelly thing.
Well, there's two don't cares. There's the don't care, and then we kind of just re-embrace him as a high-level celebrity, or is that the I don't care, like, I don't care at all whether he does anything, whether he doesn't do anything, if he's living in Tahiti, if he's trying to restart his brands. I don't care. I'm not concerned with him.
Because my point of bringing that up was, like, with R. Kelly, I think the masses or a large enough population was, like, so disgusted, by the final outcomes of the trial and things that, even though there were whispers and an actual video that you could have seen years before or prior, but for whatever, that Netflix documentary and the findings in the trial.
You got that tapped in your favorites, don't you?
Huh?
You got that tapped in your favorites, don't you?
What you mean?
The
video. That's sick. But no, like, yeah, so people, like, the masses were like, yeah, this guy, whatever. But I don't feel that for Diddy. Like, I the abuse thing is real, but I mean, I think most I think most normal people understand that that's not what he's on trial for anyway. So I you know, I don't know. I don't think the disgust feeling would be there for the masses.
I do think, like, in his favor, if he gets off on these charges, as bad as some of the testimony was, I really feel, and I'm kind of speaking for myself, I felt that the trial was going to be way more sensational than it was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to describe, like, just drugging people and orgies and just, you know, like, again, the bisexual stuff and all, like, just this crazy stuff. And I don't think it ever reached that level.
No.
And so there is a pathway, I think, psychologically, where if he is found not guilty, it's just going to be looked at as this stupid overreach. You got us hyped up for nothing, and you couldn't get these charges to stick. You just wasted our time and our attention. And that, like, he'll benefit from that, from the people that feel that way.
Yeah.
I think he would get, like, kind of like a bump and you know, just positive thoughts, you know. And then the other thing is, too, is, like, what does a conviction look like? You know? And again, in the context, yeah, they have dropped some charges. The trial wasn't as sensational as you know, I thought, or I think maybe some other people thought it might be. And if he gets convicted on, let's say he gets convicted on, you know, 50% of the charges, and then you've got your, you know, mandatory minimum sentencing and whatever that's going to come into play, it may feel like just not that satisfying to have convicted him.
Yeah, true that.
You know,
True
so
that.
it's very weird. I mean, he definitely did some bad stuff. He definitely did some weird stuff. But again, I don't think it ever got to the level of, like you said, R. Kelly with the younger girls like that. And, yeah, I mean, because that's another thing that was kind of teased in some of this.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, underage people and, you know, all this stuff. And, like, we just didn't hear that.
No.
We heard a guy that likes to go to hotel rooms and watch his girl get banged.
Yeah.
I mean, and then is kind of a jealous guy and overreacts when she doesn't do what he wants.
Yeah.
I mean, that probably disguises about 80% of dudes on the planet right now.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, snap. So we have an update here that we can get to. You got Derek saying, what is this show? This show is everything, man. We're talking about the NBA draft, but also any trending stories in the world of sports, music, and entertainment, man. On the Bench Podcast. Tap in.